On the night of December 16, 1773, a group of colonists, disguised as Native Americans, boarded ships in Boston Harbor and threw 342 chests of tea into the sea. This act of defiance became one of the most famous moments in American history, the Boston Tea Party. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the origins, significance, and impact of the Boston Tea Party. Buckle up as we explore how a simple protest over a tax on tea ignited a revolutionary spark that changed the course of history forever. The Boston Tea Party didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the result of years of growing tension between the American colonies and the British Empire. By the early 1770s, American colonists were fed up with British rule. The British government imposed a series of taxes on everyday goods like paper, glass, and tea, as part of their efforts to raise money after the costly French and Indian War. In 1765, the British passed the Stamp Act, which required colonists to buy a government stamp for all printed materials, including newspapers and legal documents. This led to widespread protests, and after it was repealed in 1766, the colonists felt like they had won a victory. But the British weren't done yet. In 1767, the British introduced the Townshend Acts, imposing duties on various goods. This time, the colonists were more vocal in their opposition. "No taxation without representation" became their rallying cry, meaning they were furious about being taxed by a government in which they had no voice. By 1773, the British East India Company was in financial trouble. To save the company, the British government passed the Tea Act, which granted the company a monopoly on tea sales in the American colonies, while also allowing it to sell tea at a lower price than the local merchants. To many colonists, this seemed like a clever way for the British to not only force them to buy taxed tea but also eliminate competition. The colonists saw it as another way of enforcing control. In response, resistance movements like the Sons of Liberty, led by figures like Samuel Adams and John Hancock, began organizing protests. They argued that the Tea Act was just another form of tyranny. And so, in Boston, tensions were rising, and it was clear that something had to give. On the night of December 16, 1773, a group of about 60 men, disguised as Mohawk Native Americans, boarded 3 ships, the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver, that were docked in Boston Harbor. These ships were carrying the tea that the British government wanted to force the colonists to buy. The disguised men, led by Samuel Adams and other members of the Sons of Liberty, wasted no time. They broke open the chests of tea and dumped the contents into the harbor, 342 chests in total, worth over £10,000, which would be roughly $1 million today. The British government was furious. They saw this act of defiance as an attack on their authority. But for the colonists, it was a triumphant protest that united them in their desire for independence from British rule. The Boston Tea Party was not without consequences. The British response was swift and severe. In retaliation, the British passed the Coercive Acts, also known as the Intolerable Acts. These acts closed Boston's port until the tea was paid for, restricted town meetings, and placed Massachusetts under martial law. The goal of these acts was to punish the colonists and make an example of Boston. But instead of crushing the resistance, the Intolerable Acts had the opposite effect. Colonies across America rallied behind Massachusetts, and many saw the British crackdown as an attack on their own rights. The Boston Tea Party and the British response to it played a crucial role in pushing the American colonies toward revolution. The Intolerable Acts united the colonies in their opposition to British rule, and in 1774, the First Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia to discuss a unified response. The tensions would continue to rise, leading to the battles of Lexington and Concord in April of 1775. The shots fired at those battles are often considered the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The Boston Tea Party remains one of the most iconic acts of resistance in American history. It showed that ordinary citizens, united by a common cause, could stand up to the might of the British Empire. It's also a reminder that sometimes the most significant moments in history happen not in grand battles, but in acts of defiance that challenge the status quo. The Boston Tea Party was the spark that helped ignite the fire of the American Revolution. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Boston Tea Party, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more historical insights.